Are off and rolling. Testing 1 2 3 4. Testing 1 2 3 4. Testing 1 2 3. We are off. This is episode 2 of the Q&DA after show. My apologies yet again. I know I'm late. I promoted on the show all day today. It was going to be at 10:30 Eastern time. Instead, it's 10:53 Eastern time. The reason is, again, our guest for Sunday Morning Football came in late. It was Bill Romanowski today. Last week it was Jeff Hostetler. Romanowski was a linebacker on the Niners and the Broncos in the 80s and 90s that won 4 Super Bowls. He was also on that Raiders team in 2002 that went to the Super Bowl and was a huge character at that time. So poor Billy Giacalone. Again, with me to tape this for Sunday Morning Football. Just like last with Hostetler. Phone number this time wasn't working. I was going straight to voicemail. Had to call Connor, who's not in today at the studio, validate that we were calling the right phone number. Went to voicemail, wasn't ringing. Finally did ring. Finally Connor called him and said, "We are calling you." Finally got him. So we were late there, but we taped it. I thought it was really good. It's our Sunday conversation, kind of a longer form conversation that we do on Sundays with a former football player. So Bill Romanowski coming up on Sunday Morning Football. I think we'll play that in the second segment, more than likely in the first hour or so, 10:20 Eastern time, 7:20 Pacific. Okay, a lot to go over. I know I'm a little bit late, but we'll still carry this through about a half hour or so. Today, the Kevin Wall thing is amazing. Yesterday, Kevin Wall was supposed to bring in cheesesteaks because we promised Pat Boyle, a.k.a. Tom Boyle, that he would win the cheesesteaks if the Padres lost in the NLCS to the Phillies. Kevin was bringing in the cheesesteaks because he was near a Wawa that sells cheesesteaks 24/7. He got caught in tunnel traffic. Whole thing was ridiculous. He comes in. So Kevin Wall is an assistant producer for us. He has been a diaper D alien. So one of the guys behind the scenes that when Mraz is out or Bilatti's out will come in. He also filled in on the web stream, the simulcast when Cap was off. He did a really good job learning the simulcast. So if you watched Twitch, YouTube, what have you, he did a lot of that. Him and EJ split reps there. The poor guy, you know, he such a good kid. And this is his final day with us because he's been a part-timer here at CBS. He got a full-time job at ESPN Radio in Bristol, Connecticut. So awesome, great gig for him. So happy for him. He wanted to come in, say his goodbyes. And so it kind of dovetailed into he was going to pick up the cheesesteaks. And not only is he 45 minutes late to the segment, so we got to like move everything around. I don't have the requisite time I want to kind of thank him on the air because we have to squeeze everything into the final hour. We have Brian Dawkins in the final hour. But he went down to Jacksonville for Giants and Jaguars, and he sat in the upper deck, and his whole forehead is bright red. And you can see the sunglasses here. Sunglasses. So it's just like, okay, first you're sunburned, now you're running late, and he said his flight from Jacksonville was delayed, then canceled. He had to drive to Orlando the next day or something to fly back. So he basically laughing at somebody else's pain. I mean, he's just had like the 4 worst days ever. But you saw the Giants beat the Jaguars, so can't feel too bad, right? Okay. On to the questions from you guys. Luis Ernesto Rojas Gonzalez. DA, any plans to bring back the visual simulcast for Sunday Morning Football? Maybe the return of the football forecast segment. So a couple of things here. If you listen to Sunday Morning Football, we did the simulcast video-wise the first 2 or 3 years. Same thing that we do on the show every single day. We ended up doing away with that because weekend staffing during the pandemic ended up kind of getting slashed. You know, there was limited resources, limited people available. And so to kind of simplify things, I think 2020 was the first year we didn't do the video simulcast, if I'm not mistaken. If it wasn't the first year, that exacerbated the issue. And so weekend programming or weekend staffing kind of got slashed a little bit. And so that's continued. So unfortunately, we can't make Cap run the stream 365. He's got to have weekends off. EJ and Kevin Wall were the first guys that really stepped into that void because we really didn't have anybody else that could do the simulcast. So, and then also the weekend staffing was a problem because the limited people that we have here have got to be on radio, and football Sundays are enormous here, as you might imagine. People are rolling on games, cutting tape, making sure that all the stringers are ready for Gelb. Gelb does the eye on football, and that show bounces to every single game, and at every game there's a live reporter. So the stringers are that reporter, and we have to coordinate when they're on the phone, when we get to them, when we're off. And so that the whole operation here is a pretty big what. And so adding the simulcast staffing to do what we do, we were like, okay, I mean, I would like it, but some things that I got to choose my battles sometimes. So I understand why it happens. So it's probably not coming back. The football forecast was the final segment, and the only reason we did away with it was because we were squeezing it into that final segment sometimes and like racing through it. And so without having to do it, it lets it breathe a little bit. I like the segment, but I thought maybe we were trying to shove too much into the final segment, which I've definitely been guilty of. Like, I like putting 10 pounds of meat into a 5-pound burrito. That's kind of my radio bit. It's like every segment we squeeze everything we can, but not always the best, tactic. Sometimes you kind of have to let things breathe a little bit. So I don't know. I'm debating that because I like the football forecast, but I'm not sure if I'm going to bring it back yet. Levy Bob says, DA, what is your favorite scary movie? I've never been a huge scary movie fan, but I'll give you a story about a scary movie. It was 2002. I remember this specifically. Probably Halloween 02 is my guess. Yeah. Because it was my first full-time job. I moved down to Fort Myers, Florida in March of 02. And I lived alone in this little apartment in Florida, which, gosh, today I don't even know if the apartment complex still exists after what the hurricane did. I think it does because we were north of Fort Myers Beach, but short story is that like tons of things got obliterated down there for the hurricane. So I hope they're okay. But I remember sitting around Halloween in my apartment and I rented The Ring. And I got to imagine I rented it from Blockbuster or I got it on Netflix on DVD. So I pop into the DVD player way before streaming. And The Ring is all about when that creepy girl with the hair coming over her face crawls out of the ground. If you see her, the ring is when your phone rings, you die. I'm not joking about this. I'm watching this movie alone. It's right around Halloween. It's nighttime. Spooky night in Florida. Palm trees waving in that late night breeze. And I'm so scared from that movie. The moment the movie ends, the credits come out, my landline rings. This is a time when I still had a landline. I had a cell phone, but also a landline. And I'm like, my first instinct was not, oh my God, I'm going to die. It's, holy bleep, this movie is so popular because somehow like they tie together when you've rented it and watched it to call your phone at the same time. I'm like, no wonder this thing is so popular. But then I'm like, wait a second. They can't do that. I'm watching it on DVD. They would never know that. Like, oh my God. No joke. I'm like, do I answer this? And I picked up my landline and I said hello, and there was nothing. And it really definitely rung. And I hung up that phone and I was like, this is the scariest moment of my life. Am I going to die? What is this about? And I just sat under my sheets the rest of that night, terrified. Like, I'm just spooking myself out. No, wait a second. How could that happen? The more I thought about it, the more I freaked myself out. So I don't know if The Ring was the scariest movie, but that was the scariest experience that I've ever had. Who the hell knows? Gloria Splat says, Mraz didn't disown the Yankees. Mraz is a clown fan most of the time, but he didn't give up on his team this year. The Mraz virus thing is, if you're following closely, Mraz has not been able to laugh fully in months. And he keeps doing this to himself. He got sick, I think, over the summer. Then he had like this phlegmy laugh. Then he screamed himself hoarse when the Giants won, week 1 against the Titans. Yeah, that was the mine eyes have seen the glory doorbell ring video. Now he's got the virus again. He's never been right. And not for nothing, but like when you do our show, the laughter's really good. I tell these guys, if you're laughing, I don't want you to fake laugh. But if you're laughing, turn on your microphone because it's addictive. When you hear other people laugh, you want to laugh. Things just feel funnier. It's why sitcoms use laugh tracks. So I'm like, if you're going to laugh, make sure you have the mics on. And Mraz now has to do the opposite. When he's laughing, he turns his mic off because it's so raspy and weird and phlegmy. I'm like, dude, you're killing us here. Nobody else is sick all the time. Nobody else is yelling themselves hoarse. Nobody else is drinking themselves on weekends into oblivion. What's going on? Why are you doing this? Why can't you get this right? I know that I took that in a different direction of the Yankees, but that's my Mraz bit. Okay. Mraz is always wrong. 22 writes in, Mraz had an oopsie DA and he smelled his hand. I'll tell you this. Pete deserves so much credit for being on that side of the glass with him because that's if you watch, it's a really small area that they're in and they're all enclosed. It's on the other side of the glass from me. Then they have a swinging door that kind of like airlocks. It's not big. And Mraz routinely farts in there. Routinely. And I'm sorry. I just would be so pissed off if I was trapped in that little cube and the other guy just kept farting. I'd be so mad. It's why Kenny Brock really. So Brock and Mraz, I've explained this before. Brock was our Pete the Body in the first 2 years on the board when we did overnights. And Brock was like a caustic, salty Philly guy. And we were working overnight, so we got no sleep. It was brutal hours. I give all the crew on the overnights, Amy and Baccioni, it's hard. It's really hard. And Mraz would routinely fart over there, and Kenny would really get mad. Like, you bleeping piece of bleep. You fat tub of bleep. And I don't blame him. And to this day, they have this kind of like love-hate where there's a bond there and they're friends. But I think Kenny really has PTSD and really kind of there's a thread of hating Mraz because he was trapped with that gas for so long. It was ugly at times. I'm looking for questions from you guys. If you have questions on the Spooktacular, if you have questions on anything behind the scenes, I'm happy to do it. Dixie Landan says, I will assure you Mraz isn't the only one drinking himself into oblivion each weekend. No, absolutely right. Most, I think, adults probably do that routinely. Ralph says, props to you for your positivity. I've been getting through a rough period at my job, and what keeps me going is hearing the opening of the show. Well, that's really nice of you, Ralph. I try to keep this in mind. We need to be at our best every day because sometimes we meet people at their worst, and it's our job to help people get through the day. I don't put the importance on us like we're supposed to make you happy, but I do believe in the importance of you come to us for an escape, you come to us for entertainment, you come to us for information, and we have to deliver. It's really not a question. That's like our bond. That's our pact, which is we really get granular. It's why I have often had a short temper on lack of work ethic around my show, which is why me and Mraz, it was difficult for times when we first started because I wasn't used to somebody not understanding the commitment that it took. And granted, I probably take that commitment a little too personally, and I probably drive a little too hard at times, but Mraz wasn't ready for that type of commitment. He wasn't ready for that type of ambition of the career. And I think now he gets it far more. I mean, Mraz has grown up quite a bit in our 10 years together, but it is why I was viscerally upset at times because I really believe in that commitment, that there's a social pact here, that if you come to us, we, at the very least, we have to deliver our best, and we have to try to deliver. We might not, but we have to try. And there's things you can do every single day to try harder. And I've gotten better about that. Marrying my wife really helped because, it tends to put things in perspective when you have somebody else. And she's better about walking me through things that I get frustrated by. And, there's a little bit of I did this so much on my own for so much of my career that you have to drive, you have to push, you have to commit if you really want to get anywhere. It's just too hyper competitive of an industry not to do it. And also, this is my passion. So I say this because I appreciate you saying that, Ralph. And that's the effort every single day, is that I know we meet people on bad days. And you can have bad days for a million reasons, and it's not anybody's fault. Everybody has bad days. It's nobody's fault. It's like you get T-boned in a car crash and now you got to deal with that crap, or somebody's in the hospital, you got to deal with that crap, or something at work happens and you get demoted, or, you get fired, or your company downsizes, you deal with that crap, or just like common things, or the kids are sick, or, the wife's on you, or the husband's on you, or, just crap happens. And it's our job every single day to meet that, because that's why we're here. It's like, that's our social pact. So I'm glad in whatever way it could help, but it's why the show is always, in my estimation, supposed to be optimistic. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be fast moving. It's supposed to be musical. It's supposed to sound positive, whatever that is. It's why, I've drilled down with Pete, what's the music we play? How long do we play these clips? Everything has to sound upbeat, optimistic, energetic, fun, because that's the job. And I do think that it's a push and pull when you're in this industry, because I think when you're a host, you want to be transparent. I think when you're a host, you want to be authentic. But I think when you have bad days and you let them out of the air, it becomes self-indulgent. It becomes like nobody wants to hear your problems because they've got problems. So there has to be a little bit of a tap dance that you do, where even on your bad day, you've got to be really good. But, some of the most powerful emails I've ever gotten have been people privately being like, I was going through a divorce. I was going through a sickness. I was going through my father dying. I was going through this, that, or the other thing. And just the routine of listening to you, that got me through. And that's very powerful for me, because routine is powerful, and because the knowing, I turn on this radio show and today I laugh. I turn on this radio show and today I feel upbeat, or they're upbeat, or it's a distraction, or whatever. That's very, very important to me. And, I don't take that lightly, is the point. Robin 321 has now weighed in. Today was a rough one for Rob. Rob says, I have watched you throw shade at me numerous times, and I haven't even tweeted. I just sit and watch. There are a few of you who do it. It's the D-alien to D-alien hate, which is a lot. Oh, boy. Okay, so I don't know if, Rob, you're directing that towards me. It sounds like you're directing it towards the other D-aliens. This thing between Mraz and Rob of the 321 is something else, because Rob's intentions seem to be very good. Talking directly to Rob. Rob, I think your intentions seem really good. You and I have exchanged DMs, maybe even emails privately, and feels like you're a good dude. But Mraz thinks that you're an attention hog, and Mraz thinks that you're always, what did he say today? Rob always goes 1 for 3, which, as Pete pointed out, 1 for 3 is a 333 batting average. That's not bad. But I don't know if Mraz then incites other D-aliens to hate on Rob or something else, but Rob's effort's there. He's an effort guy, and you want effort guys, right? I mean, rather have good effort guys than bad effort guys. So I don't know where this Mraz and Rob thing goes, but it's a whole thing. The kid 1515, I just think that Mraz steps on Rob to make himself seem tall, and that's not right. Participation makes the show go round. That's Enrique in Dallas. I've been a D-alien since 2013 when I got incarcerated when you guys were on the night shift. Now I'm still listening to you guys when I'm out. When I was in there, and still now you guys lift up my spirits, and I listen to you guys every morning. I'm listening to you guys grow, and you guys help me grow just by listening to you guys. You guys help me out, and I love you guys. Well, that's really, really appreciative, man. And dude, look, that's such a good story of just like going through something really difficult, learning from it, being incarcerated, coming out on the other side, and becoming a better person for it. That's what, you hope everybody grows no matter what their issues are through those really terrible times in your life. But those are out of anything that I do on this show, the things that are most powerful are when you hear a story from somebody that, hey, you were with me during this. Because, I can't know all of our listeners, but the fact that I could be almost a passenger on your journey, that means a great deal to me, because that's a choice for you. And I hesitate to get on a soapbox about my industry, but sometimes I feel this way. Sometimes I don't feel like our decision makers or other hosts, to be quite frank, understand that responsibility. I think, there's so much of a focus. I understand why, on profit margin, on staffing, on advertising, on ratings, that, look, those are how jobs are decided. But I don't know if people focus enough on that interrelationship thing that we have. I think it's sometimes taken for granted. And so, the Wisconsin thing is a good example. I guess I probably talked about this quite a bit, but I had this whole Wisconsin trip set up, and I wanted to go out and meet people at sports bars, meet our listeners at the Green Bay game, do this whole thing. And, the powers that be felt like, from a budgetary standpoint, it just wasn't going to work. And I was like, well, what's the priority here? Is the priority our listeners, or the priority X, Y, or Z? And I always feel like it's the listeners. So I get frustrated by that at times. At the same time, look, they've been very good to me, because they never tell me what to do. They never tell me what to talk about. They don't tell me, don't do this. You got to do this. You've got to talk about the Cowboys every single day. They never say this, so at the same time, that way they're letting me be loyal to the listener as well. So I understand it's a give and take, but I don't think we always understand those types of stories. Brain Cramp says, great meeting you and Bogusch in Boise. Bogusch really is a kind sir. Now, that is true. Bogusch actually is a very kind sir. He is like a little bit more polished than the rest of us dolts. He's also a little bit more buttoned up, and he also is really nice. He's just a very friendly guy. And as part of like the internal DA show stuff, which you can't really replicate. Remember, Bogusch and Bellotti have been working as long as me and Mraz have been together. So when me and Mraz were doing overnights and nights, we were not with Bogusch and Bellotti, but they were together on the early editions of the morning show, which were Tiki, Tierney, and Dana. Then there was Gio and Jones. Then there was Taz and the Moose. So they've been together for 10 years now. And one of Bogusch's great pleasures, even though he's a kind sir, is to needle Bellotti. He just knows how to stick the needle in a twist. And when he does it, it's just really, really great. He gets such a kick out of making Bellotti squirm. And he's a kind sir, but he loves that part of it. On the Spooktacular, I mean, we talked about this on the PGP, but I'm going to reiterate this. Pete doing the windy waiver guy, wacky windy waiver, is so perfect, because who is most frustrated daily? Who's most agitated by distraction, by extra work, by confusion? Who is most agitated, so easily agitated, is Pete. And Pete has now had 2 different Halloween costumes that are totally distracting and labor intensive. He made himself the Green Party, which was a great costume, but he was in a green spandex top to bottom and he couldn't see out of it. And then this year, he is the Windy Waver. He's got to plug it in, inflate it. Head is all over the place. It's flopping over him. He can't see. He can't speak. He can't breathe. He can't move. I'm like, who did this to you except you? Here I am, another but a bathrobe and a hat as Cousin Eddie. I can do my job completely fine. Mraz is dressed as Brian Dable. He can do his job completely fine. Bogus is dressed as Captain Jack. He can do his job completely fine. It's only Pete who is the most irritable, who has put himself in a situation where he's fighting himself. Now, to Pete's credit, he wasn't like angry about it or frustrated. He was laughing at the goofiness of it, but it was so perfect. It was just too perfect. Let's see. Somebody asked the kid asked who's the most interesting character in the Mraz Inner Circle. There's a couple of them. The Bayou Bear is super interesting because the Bayou Bear makes Mraz look tiny. He makes Mraz look like a scat back. He's enormous. If Mraz is 265 thereabouts, I'm guessing the Bayou Bear is 365. I apologize if I'm overshooting, but I mean, he's a mountain of a man. He was the man that at Bob's Bar 1 drank a case of White Claws during the show. I think he drank 24 White Claws while we were on the air and then finished off like 36 to 38 of them over the course of the day. And he's hysterical. He's like, it's just a big, lovable character. But I think the Bayou Bear's mad at me. And I think it's because when I was promoting Bob's Bar 2 this past summer, I made a crack about his weight that you won't find a spot at the bar because Bayou Bear will be taking up all the seats. And I think he has had it out for me ever since. I've sensed some animosity. So I apologize. Here I thought maybe I was just everybody's in on the joke, but maybe that was wrong. Probably not funny if a skinny guy is calling a larger guy a joke like that. So I don't know. I hope he's not that mad at me, but I have a sense that he is. But he is one of them. But also, Mraz's family is all super interesting. I mean, he gets a lot of the zaniness from Bob and from Nancy. His parents are combined very wacky themselves. I mean, you hear the stories about Bob and Nancy. I don't know about you, but I don't think my mom would A, clear a dance floor at a wedding with a fart, and then B, blame it on me and live with that blame as a lie for 15 years. I don't think she would do that. So, I mean, talk about characters, right? Talk about characters. These are some of the greats. Also, the kid is saying that Mraz completely mailed in his costume. We've all seen this a mile away since Brian was hired. Lazy as always, Mraz, way to go. About the Brian Dable costume. I could see that critique. I'm not going to levy it because Mraz made a good point. If I'm not Brian Dable this year, when am I going to be Brian Dable? Right? He's 6-1. He's the new head coach of the Giants. He's the toast of the town. And Mraz looks exactly like him. If he gets fired, he can never be Brian Dable again. And if 1-5, you really can't be Brian Dable. So timing-wise, it works right now. They're hot. At the same time, it kind of just looked like Mraz's everyday getup with a headset. Okay, he had the red challenge flag. Where Mraz lost me was when he said he sounded like Brian Dable. I'm like, no, not really. Not really. Also, how good was Katie Lindahl yesterday? Every time she comes in, the day just flies by. She is one of those rare guests where the moment she joined us, she got the bit, which is so weird because if you were a longtime listener to CBS Sports Radio, she was a friend of Taz and the Moose. She was a friend of Taz through wrestling. She loves wrestling. And they had her on all the time. And then when we inherited that time slot, what happened when we were doing mid-mornings, 9 to noon? Somehow we got Katie through. They had to cancel her or something like that, and we got her on the show. Or maybe she couldn't do mornings anymore. She couldn't do mornings, so she did our show for some reason. So anyway, and I'll never forget the first day that Katie came in for us. She was in Florida the day before doing some speaking engagement. She does these like tech. She's like the MC of like tech fairs and tech events and tech talks. And the next morning, she was scheduled to come into the studio. And I think Mraz got a text from her that she might be a little bit late, but don't worry about it. And anyway, she came in, and I talked to her before we came on, and I had never met her before. And I said, "How's it been going?" She goes, "It's been good, but I just landed." I was like, "You just landed?" She's like, "Yeah, I had a morning flight." I said, "Where'd you come from?" "Florida." "So you flew from Florida to New York this morning, and now you're on the show?" And again, we were doing 9 to noon. So let's just say it's 10 a.m. or something like that. I was like, how did you do all of that today and come to a radio hit? She's like, "There was weather down in Florida. We got delayed. It wasn't supposed to come in this late in the morning." She goes, "But I would have driven overnight to be here because I told you I was going to be here." I said, "Katie, no offense, but you don't owe me anything like this. That's very nice of you. But if we need to cancel your slot and reschedule it, that's totally fine." But that's the type of person that she was. So I said, "Boy, that's such a commendable attitude." And I totally believe it. Now this is 4 years later. And, her and I said this the other day, like we're like brother and sister now. I mean, she's come over my house. Her and my wife are friends. Like we've gone out to dinner. She's just the best. She really would be that person that would drive through the night to be at a commitment. But the moment she walked into the show that day, she got the show. Her brain works like our brains. Her sense of humor is the same. And yesterday during the Spooktacular, she was into it all. I mean, is there anything funnier than watching Katie laugh the way that she did at Mraz's deep groaning and moaning over my bat story? I don't know if anything could be that funny because she's really tearing up and crying. And I mean, this is no joke. I mean, the story is on Sunday, I'm watching TV. I'm watching football out on the deck. So it ended up being a pretty nice day here in the Northeast. I unwind my awning and a bat drops to the porch. And it's like on the porch, kind of twitching a little bit. And I'm thinking, oh God, I hope it just got knocked out and it'll fly away because I don't want to deal with a bat right now. But it doesn't move for 15 minutes. And I'm going, okay, now I got to deal with the bat. So I tell this story about kind of scooping up the bat in a shovel. I then kind of got to get cardboard under it as I trap it with a potting plant potter. And then I move it into the woods. And through this whole thing, Mraz is not in studio. He's at his home because it was a flu day for him, right? He had the virus this week. So this is something that can only happen through sheer luck, is that he is gasping at every turn of the story. And I'm like looking at Pete going, but keep his levels up because this is so stupid. And he's just like, oh God, oh, what's going to happen? As though he's in a movie theater worried about where the killer is going to come from. I mean, I'm just removing a bat from my porch. Oh God. Oh God. So I told Pete the next day, this was Monday show. And let me tell you this, I felt bad that we went so long with it because it happened on Sunday. So I talked about it on Monday and it ended up being like a 7 to 8 minute segment. I'm like, oh, somebody's going to have tuned in on a Monday and heard 10 minutes of us talking about my bat story instead of talking about, Tom Brady losing to the Panthers. And I thought, boy, we went on that too long on a football Monday. But that after the show that day, I said, Pete, you've got to isolate that Mraz stuff. It's too funny. We have to play that. He's like, okay. The next day coming, he's like, there's too much. I need another day to work on it. So he had it by Wednesday. That was yesterday's show, which is when we played it. Oh God. Oh, what's going to happen? Oh God. Oh God. What's going to happen? Brain Cramp says, I think a Movember would be cool. Pick a charity in Mo's name. Don't shave, but I like the idea of Movember. It's a cool idea. Little Mo, our friend Mo Gaba down in Baltimore, who passed away a couple of years ago after lifetime battle of cancer. He passed away at 13 years old, is a huge part of the show, as you know. And how cool is it that the Ravens still have Mo in Baltimore in their end zone lit up? Last year was in gold. This year's it's in black, but it's a different. I don't know if the Baltimore is purple and the Mo is black, or it's just outlined in a gold, but they still have the Mo highlighted, which is, I mean, come on. One of our listeners is emblazoned in an NFL end zone forever. Is that not amazing? Is it not amazing just to be like associated with somebody that was that special? Amazing. The kid says, how was it having the entire crew over at the house with all the kiddos? Any unaired stories that you can tell? It was great. Since I moved into the house with my wife, we moved there about 3 years ago now. Mraz and Danielle had come over when they just had Taylor year one. Then last year we didn't do anything. And then this year I said to the Bourbon Bell over the summer, so we got to have the whole crew over and everybody's, the wives and the kids. I was like, I just really want to get everybody together at the house. And where I live in the Hudson Valley is very like fall-y foliage, apple orchards. That's where I grew up. That's why I'm more of an outdoors guy than the rest of these guys. I love hiking. I love fishing. I love being in the outdoors. I love working with my hands. I love being on the property. Like, I grew up around dairy farms and corn farms and apple orchards and mountains. And that's really who I am first and foremost. And so I was like, we got to have them up here because it's the best time of year up here. It's like gold to just look at the leaves turn and go drink apple cider and pick pumpkins. And like, it's just, so they did. And everybody was great. I mean, the ribs debacle is like my biggest lament because I have this smoker. I love smoking meats in this pit barrel smoker. I love the fact that I can do it really authentically. Like the people that do the pellets, the green egg stuff, it's fine. I'm sure it's very good. The electric timers where you just set the temperature and you let it go and you put the timer, little wire you control with your cell phone. I'm like, that's not how I'm going to smoke meat. That's just not how I'm going to do it. I have to do this with the most basic, unelectronic, traditional way. That's just the way that I want to do it. So this pit barrel is just basically looks like a hobo's barrel that you would light a fire in and warm your hands. But I just take wood from the property and I split it and I dry it and I chunk it. And then that's the only thing that I use to smoke the meat. And I had these ribs that I bought 3 racks and I had all of this chicken as well. And people didn't want ribs and I had the marinade and I had the seasoning and I had gone all out. And then I took the chicken out of the fridge that morning and it was bad. The whole fridge stunk like rotten chicken. And I was like, oh God. So I immediately threw out the chicken, but I said, this is the same place I just bought the ribs from. Are the ribs bad too? And I totally got in my own head and I pulled out the ribs that morning before everybody showed up and I'm smelling these ribs and I'm like putting them up to my nose going, does this smell bad? I think it smells bad. No, it doesn't smell bad. It smells like ribs. Is this what raw pork smells like? And I couldn't shake it. And I had to throw away 3 uncooked full racks of ribs that had been marinated overnight. And it just was like, so nobody got the true smoking experience. I did half a rack and I did some other chicken that they brought over, which was fine. It was like a late addition, but that was crushing to me because I wanted everybody to have that. But ultimately it was great. Everybody had a good time and the kids were hysterical. I mean, it was like Muppet Babies. It was everybody's little versions of themselves running around. Little Jake Bogus is just like Bogues. And Taylor and Peyton have very strong Mraz characteristics, although Taylor is such a sweetheart. She's like polite. She's really like she's very smart. So maybe she's nothing like Mraz actually. And then there's like little Timmy Bilotti who's like running around like a wild man, but it looks like a little tiny Bilotti with hair, big curly hair. And like, it was great. The whole thing was really, really great. Let's see. Dixieland Dan says, let's revisit the bat story. Why in the world did you not scoop up that thing and chunk it into the woods? It ain't going to fly up and get you. What's going to happen when you get a possum stuck on the porch or a raccoon caught in the trash? Well, because where my deck is, if I scooped it up and just flung it from the porch, it was not going to make the woods. It was going to land on my lawn. And I didn't want to like mow over a dead bat. So I was going to have to move it somehow. So I could either move it in the shovel or I was going to trap it. And moving to the shovel was the bat was twitching and showed me his fangs. So I'm like, do I really want to get bit by a bat? I know it's a small odds, but do I really want to take this twitching bat that's like and carry it, which was going to be, you've seen my lawn on Instagram. It's a big freaking lawn. The woods are not close. I got to carry a bat 50 yards that's hissing at me. No, thanks. So I said, I'm also closing it up. I also had a friend over, so I did not want company to get bit by a bat. I had a buddy over, we were watching football. I mean, I don't think it's that crazy. Now, Dixieland Dan, I know you probably eat these things for breakfast, but you got to give me some credit here. I thought I was resourceful enough, and I didn't get bit by the bat, and it should be noted, I put that bat out in the woods. I went back the next day, gone. So either it flew away or it got eaten real quick. Probably a critter ate it. That's my guess. See, S Midnight knows there's always a chance of rabies. That's exactly right. I'm trying to be responsible here because Mraz is out for a week with whatever type of virus he had. If I'm out, now we're really screwed, huh? Okay. We've done a good 40 minutes on this or so. Oh, Moist Pork says, I bet Torg Bellinger would eat it. That's actually a good point. I could have called Torg. Torg, what do I do with this thing? I got a dead bat. You've taught me how to eat crow before. What do we do here? All right. I'm going to wrap things up on that point. What else did I want to hit today? The wings, the virus of Mraz, the spooktacular, not the wings, the cheesesteak. Padres losing screws us out of back Philly back. Manny going to cruise. Thanks for nothing, Padres. But anyway, this was fun. As always, the Q&DA. I'll try to be on time next week if our Sunday morning football guest does not get delayed. And we'll do this again. Thanks for all the interaction. Oh, and by the way, Cap got the green light from the bosses to do this on Twitch and YouTube. So these are simulcast, two different places now. So that's what we'll continue to do. If you're on Twitch, if you're on YouTube, either one will work. And I don't know if I'm getting both comments or just the Twitch comments. That's going to be up to Cap to help me out. But either way, I appreciate it all. I'm signing off. We'll see you tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.